everybody. We've got smiles on our faces. We've got our cup of coffee, and that means that it is time for College Football Mornings here, brought to you by CampusToCanton.com. It is Waiver Wire Tuesday, and I'm joined by Colin Decker, my co-host on the C2C pod, my sworn enemy everywhere else. Colin, good morning to you. Ready to talk some waiver wire here for everybody this morning.
Yeah, let's do it. Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to roll.
All right, that's not what you were saying before we got on. You were complaining. No. So,
yes.
But here we are. There's no turning back now. All right, let's dive right into this, Colin. If you guys are looking for more waiver wire information, real quick before we kick this off, we do write a weekly article over at CampusToCanton.com. Talk about it on the Campus to Canton pod. Jared talks about it every week on Chasing the Natty. So plenty of places to go for waiver information. And just one note, it was announced this week that Fantrax is no longer tracking rostership percentage on their website. So some guessing kind of based on what the spread is across our leagues as to which players are kind of probably going to be available in yours. So figured we'd hit you with that little qualifier before we dive in here, because we used to be able to give you a more accurate percentage. So let's hit the first name here, Colin. Let's start with Kelon Stokes, wide receiver at Tulsa. This Tulsa passing offense been much better than I expected it to be. Davis Brin was pretty average last year, but been much better. And that whole wide receiver room has been really good. So I would actually recommend, if any of them are available on your waiver wire, to take a good hard look. But Kelon Stokes is the guy that's getting the most targets on the team. And he's not really getting the red zone looks, but it doesn't really matter. That's not the kind of guy he is anyway. 19 catches, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns through the first 2 weeks here. He's not Bryce Ford Wheaton. He's not Chris Thornton, but I think he's can be in that tier below that. I think he can be a solid back end wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 for most of the year. And he's available a lot of places. I've been looking around the last couple of days. So Kelon Stokes, a big target for me here on waivers this week.
Yeah, I think that's a great call here. We've seen enough out of Tulsa's passing offense this year to think that, this could be sustainable all year. And he was a leader before the injury last year. So
he's old.
That's a good call.
This is 6th or 7th. He's 6th year on campus, I believe. So yeah, he's seen it all.
Yeah. Next guy up on the list here, we have a guy that I talked a little bit about last week. Luke Musgrave, tight end for Oregon State. He did it again this week. And his usage is the most impressive thing out of a tight end. He lined up out wider in the slot almost 50% of the time. He has an ADOT of 12. He's leading the team in targets. He has a 30% target share. And out of the tight end, that's pretty unheard of here. Now, he is injured. He is reportedly out this week. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a long-term thing. So I would still pick him up. I would still add him here. But with the caveat of you're not going to be able to use him this week.
Yeah, we added an editor's note to the article this week that he's in and I did mention, like you said, short term. But if you're in a league that has very, very limited waivers and you just desperately need help at tight end, if you don't think you're going to be able to trade for one, then maybe pivot elsewhere. I name dropped Joel Wilson, this guy at Central Michigan. Really hit or miss as to whether he's available places, but I noticed him a lot on waivers this week, or at least more than I thought I would. So just a name to toss out there if you're really, really looking for immediate tight end help. If you only have 2 waiver ads, you really shouldn't be wasting one on a tight end anyway. But I digress on that one. Musgrave definitely more upside long term. Let's talk about Kalen Laborn here, running back at Marshall. You want to talk about guys that have pedigree. Laborn definitely has that. You wouldn't guess it because he's at Marshall, but former 5-star running back, was at Florida State a couple years. Some academic / other type issues, left there, went JUCO, and now is at Marshall. Look, we don't know how long he's going to have this job. It's Rasheen Ali's when he comes back. It is almost certain that Laborn is probably just kind of keeping the seat warm for him. But we don't know when Rasheen Ali will be back. And I'm kind of done playing I don't want to waste a waiver pickup because I don't know how long. I just think he's worth it no matter what at this point. After his performance this week against Notre Dame, I think he's going to be a startable option almost weekly moving forward. And heck, if Ali doesn't come back, you've got this guy all season. But I think take the points where you can get him. Kalen Laborn, a guy that I really, really, really I think he's a plug and play guy almost immediately. And that's kind of tough to find a couple weeks into the season here.
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, we don't know exactly when Ali is going to be back, and you can't really play the waiting game. So fire up Laborn. He looked really good last week against Notre Dame.
Yeah, can't play the waiting game when you're 0-2 like I am everywhere. Tough.
Next guys we have on the list here is a little bit of a package deal. We have Legente Wester and Jamal Edrin. Both of these guys, wide receivers for FAU. Wester is 15 on the year, 15 catches, 222 yards, 3 touchdowns. Edrin, who is a redshirt sophomore, or a redshirt freshman, 12 catches, 159 yards, 2 touchdowns on the year as well. And this passing attack for FAU has just been better than we were expecting here this year, especially with N'Kosi Perry at the helm. But they are firing on all cylinders right now. And both of these guys are guys that, you could pick up here off your waiver wire and could be plug and play flex options.
Yeah, and speaking of, if N'Kosi Perry's still available and you desperately need some quarterback help, I think you could do a lot worse than him. I notice he is available a lot of places at this point in time. Quaylon Jones, I think, is a really interesting name, and one that people, if you've been playing these kind of formats for a few years, you definitely recognize that he was a really kind of sleeper, popular kind of guy coming out as a freshman a couple years ago, borderline 3-4 star guy. Really, really athletic. And for people that really like thighs on those running backs, he's got them.
Thighs, save lives.
Tim McWilliams, not been super effective there for Baylor. Got a little dinged up this week. I did hear he came back in that game, but I know he left against BYU. Jones came in and got, I think he was one short of the team leading carries. He had 16 carries, had 2 touchdowns. If that's going to be his usage, where he's kind of the red zone / like 12 to 15, 17 rushes a game, then I think that's a really nice role for him. Baylor still wants to run the ball. I really think that they do want to do that. So I like Jones. This is more of a guy where if you have unlimited waivers and you're kind of churning those last couple roster spots, but like McWilliams, I think there's legitimate NFL upside there too if he has a nice year there. So I mean, not day 1, day 2, but I think he can be on an NFL roster. So Quaylon Jones, definitely a guy that I'm, if I have unlimited waivers or 8 or something, I'm comfortable picking him up at this stage.
Yeah, especially with McWilliams being banged up a little bit there. Baylor put 2 running backs in the NFL this past year. Now not high picks, but still they're putting them in the league at least. The next 2 we have here on the list are it's a Chris Moxley shout out special here. The Georgia Southern duo of Kyle Van Treese and Derwin Burgess. Van Treese is a guy that I highlighted a little bit last week as a guy that I was keeping an eye on. And he went out there and did it again. He had a really nice game this past week here. He went 37 of 56, 409 yards, 1 touchdown. He did have a touchdown on the ground. He did also have 2 picks, but at this point, the passing volume we're seeing from him is really impressive. He did that against Nebraska this week. So he's a guy that I would be looking to pick up here if you need a quarterback, if it's thin off of waivers. And then his top target here, Derwin Burgess, went 12 for 119 this past week. And this offense, like I talked about a little bit last week, is Clay Helton at the helm here. They're going to throw the ball, and Derwin Burgess seems to be that top target there. So he's another option you could pick up here and potentially start at some weeks.
Yes, I received a lot of flack for not putting him in my article this week. Champ Fleming's next on the list here. Wide receiver at Arkansas State. I've actually never seen this before. Through 2 games, he has 17 targets. He has 17 catches. So, caught everything. No drops, no off-target passes. Honestly, really, really incredible that we're at that point with him. 227 yards and a touchdown. He's earning targets in that Arkansas State offense where a lot of the other guys that we were hopeful would have not. He's definitely been the standout there. The top guy there usually produces pretty well. They like to pass the ball a fair amount there, and defense is not great, so a lot of shootout potential. So Champ Fleming is a guy, again, not limited waivers, but if you've got a decent amount of waivers to unlimited, then he's definitely a guy that I'm targeting.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice pickup this week. He's one of my top targets here, just based on that usage that he's been seeing.
Noted. How many? I'm going to go check the leagues we're in real quick.
Yeah, see, that's why I hate doing these shows with you. You and I, we're in too many leagues together here. But the next guy we have up here on the list is Carter Bradley, quarterback for South Alabama. He was a transfer from Toledo this year, won the starting job, and he's actually looked pretty good so far through these first 2 games. Now, hasn't been the steepest competition here. You got Nicholls State in week 1, Central Michigan last week, Central Michigan who got gashed on by Spencer Sanders, and Bradley did the same thing. 26 for 42, 354 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he did have 1 pick there, but this is back-to-back 3 touchdown weeks for Carter Bradley. I think he's a guy that I'm adding on my watch list now at this point.
Last guy here for me, and I talked a lot about Kobe Paysor on a couple different shows last week, and I basically said, look, this is a long-term and a short-term play, but not the middle, because Paysor has a really nice rule while Josh Downs is out. He seems like he's really stepped in to what he does. Downs will probably be back soon, so I said, Paysor, 1 or 2 more games maybe you get out of him, then you got to wait till next year. But I think that's still a pretty valuable guy, and he's definitely a nice guy we're stashing. Chase Roberts, the wide receiver at BYU, is kind of a similar thing. We don't know if Jaron Hall will be back next year or not. We can speculate on that at a later date here. But we know that Puka Nacua will not be back, and then Gunnar Romney, who knows there. We also don't know if Romney will be back anytime soon, hence why I'm drawing a parallel to Kobe Paysor here. Roberts stepped in this week, 8 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown. They need a warm body there to catch passes. He can do it with both of those wide receivers out. I mean, I think he's the number 1 option right now, and even when Puka comes back, I still think he can be viable. So Robert's a guy that I like for the next couple games, then maybe not late in the season, and then next season again you can pick it back up with him. So I think it's not a guy where you have short term and then you're cutting him. You get some long term value as well.
Yeah. I mean, he'll have to survive, the round of off-season cuts for you there, but after your supplemental, and we'll see how that goes. But these absolutely could be an option for you.
Always got plenty of guys to cut at the end of the season, Colin. You know me.
True. Especially if you do the patented double tap.
I don't do that.
All right. Well, I think that is it for our list here, right?
I think so. That's all I got.
That's all I got too.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in here. Check out everything that we have over at campusdecanton.com. Check us out on the Campus Decanton podcast. New episode dropping here this morning. Until next time, guys, I am Austin.
And this is Colin.
And have a good one.